You said sorry today. Maybe you said it without thinking. Maybe you bumped into a stranger, or interrupted someone mid-sentence, or sent a message 10 minutes too late, and the word just came out automatically. Sorry. But here is the strange part. You have no idea why you actually said it. Not really. Because the real story of the apology has nothing to do with politeness. It has nothing to do with manners or social grace or being a good person. The real answer is far stranger than that. And once you understand it, every apology you ever give will feel completely different. Your brain is ancient. Not in a poetic sense, in a literal, biological sense. The part of your brain that made you say sorry this morning is older than language. It is older than fire. It is older than anything you would recognize as human. And that ancient piece of machinery had one job. Not kindness, survival. Go back far enough and you stop being human altogether. You are a small, warm-blooded creature moving through a world that is trying to kill you at every turn. You live in a group. You need that group more than you need almost anything else. Food, shelter, protection from predators, help raising offspring. All of it depends on staying inside the group. Being expelled is not embarrassing in that world. It is a death sentence. Now here is the thing about group living. It creates friction. Inevitable, constant friction. Someone eats more than their share. Someone makes a noise at the wrong moment and draws a predator close. Someone fails to show up when needed. These are not small mistakes. In a world with no hospitals, no grocery stores, no locked doors, a mistake by one member of a group can cost another member their life. So what do you do with the member who made that mistake? This is the question that changed everything. Primatologist Frans de Waal spent decades watching chimpanzees at the Arnhem Zoo in the Netherlands, and what he found was not what most scientists expected. He found that after conflict, chimpanzees actively seek out resolution. One chimp will approach another, reach out a hand, make a specific sound. The other chimp will respond. The tension dissolves. They groom each other. They share food. The group stabilizes. De Waal called it reconciliation behavior, and he noted something striking. The chimp who caused the conflict almost always initiated it. Something in the chimp understood that the relationship needed repairing. That understanding is not small. It is enormous. It means the beginning of the apology is not a human invention. It is a primate inheritance. But why did that behavior exist at all? Why would a chimpanzee or your early human ancestor bother repairing a relationship? The answer comes from evolutionary biology. Specifically, it comes from the concept of reciprocal altruism, described by evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers in 1971. The idea is this: you help me today, I help you tomorrow. But that only works if there is trust, and trust is fragile. One broken promise, one act of aggression, one moment where you took more than you gave, and the whole system of cooperation begins to crack. Reconciliation behavior is the mechanism that patches the crack. It signals that the offender knows what they did, that they acknowledge the harm, and that they intend to keep cooperating. That signal keeps the network of mutual aid alive. Without it, the group splinters. And a splintered group dies. Your ancestors understood this before they had words to explain it. Now here is where it gets even stranger. Because the apology is not just about the other person. It is about the group watching. Anthropologist Michael Tomasello has spent years studying the difference between chimpanzees and humans, and one of his most important findings is this: humans are uniquely obsessed with what others think of them. Not just one person, everyone, the whole group. This is sometimes called reputation management, and your early human ancestors were doing it constantly. Imagine a small band of hunter-gatherers, 30, maybe 40 people. Everyone knows everything about everyone else. There are no secrets. If you wrong someone and you do nothing about it, every single person in that group sees it. They update their model of you. You become the person who takes without giving, the person who harms and does not repair. And slowly, quietly, people stop cooperating with you. They stop sharing food. They stop including you in hunts. They stop defending you. You become invisible to the group. And invisible means dead. The apology, even in its most primitive form, was a public act. It was not just a message to the person you harmed. It was a broadcast to everyone else. It said, I know what the rules are. I broke them. I am still a member of this community who takes those rules seriously. Anthropologists call this kind of signaling costly signaling. The cost is the submission, the vulnerability, the moment of lowering yourself in front of others. That cost is what makes the signal credible. Anyone can claim to be trustworthy. Not everyone is willing to publicly accept that they were wrong. Think about that the next time you find an apology difficult. The difficulty is the point. But when did this become language? When did the grunt or the gesture or the reaching out hand become actual words? This is where the timeline gets genuinely fascinating, because language did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years. And the words associated with apology are some of the most revealing artifacts in the entire history of human speech. The word sorry itself comes from the Old English sarig, meaning distressed, grieved, full of sorrow. Not guilty, sorrowful. That distinction matters. Early verbal apology was not a legal admission. It was an emotional display. You were not saying, I confess. You were saying, I feel this. I am showing you my pain. And that display served the same function as the chimpanzee reaching out its hand. It was evidence of emotional attunement. It proved you understood how the other person felt. Because only someone who genuinely belongs to the group would feel sorrow at harming one of its members. Psychologist Roy Baumeister conducted a landmark series of studies in the 1990s examining how people describe interpersonal offenses. He found something remarkable. When people describe being the victim of an offense, they describe long-lasting damage, deep wounds, serious consequences. When the same people describe times they themselves were the offender, they describe minor misunderstandings, quickly resolved, already forgotten. He called this the magnitude gap. The offense means far more to the person who suffered it than to the person who caused it. And this gap, this structural mismatch in how humans perceive harm, is exactly why the apology had to evolve. Without some ritual of acknowledgement, the victim and the offender would never agree on what actually happened. They would live in permanently different realities. The group would fracture along the fault line of that disagreement. The apology is a reality-aligning device. Now think about what that means in a small, ancient community. Two hunters go out. One makes a careless noise. A deer bolts. The hunt fails. The group goes hungry. The hunter who stayed quiet is angry. He has a right to be angry. But how long does that anger last? How much damage does it do? That depends entirely on whether the careless hunter acknowledges what happened. If he does, the damage is contained. If he does not, the resentment spreads. It infects the next hunt and the one after that. It starts affecting who shares meat with whom. It ripples outward until the whole social fabric has a tear in it. The apology was the social immune system. It existed to stop exactly that cascade. And here is what makes it even more sophisticated. The ancient apology was not just words. It was never just words. Researchers studying reconciliation in both non-human primates and pre-literate human societies consistently find that the physical component is essential. Touch, proximity, eye contact, or the deliberate avoidance of it. A bowed head, lowered shoulders. These are not cultural inventions. They are cross-cultural universals. You find them in every documented human society ever studied, which means they were in place long before any particular culture existed. They are part of the biological hardware. Your body knows how to apologize even when your mouth does not. This is why you sometimes feel the urge to reach out and touch someone when you are saying you are sorry. It is not a social nicety. It is ancient communication. Your nervous system is doing something that primate nervous systems have been doing for millions of years. It is sending a signal through physical proximity. I am not a threat. I am still one of you. I am offering my body as evidence of my sincerity. Which raises the next question. Can an apology be fake? Can the signal be gamed? This is one of the most interesting problems in the entire evolutionary history of the apology. Because if apology functions as a trust signal, then the obvious move for a selfish individual is to learn to fake it, say the words, do the physical display, reap the social benefits, and then do the same harmful thing again tomorrow. Your ancestors thought about this too, not in so many words, but evolution thought about it for them. What researchers find consistently across cultures and across species is that reconciliation behavior is monitored, not just by the victim, by the whole group. And groups develop intuitions about who apologizes genuinely and who does not. They track patterns across time. The person who harms and apologizes and then harms again and apologizes again is eventually recognized as something specific. Someone who has learned to use the apology as a tool rather than offering it as a genuine signal. And when that recognition clicks into place, the apology stops working. The group stops accepting it. The social credit runs out. In other words, the apology has a built-in fraud detection system. And that system is other people's memories. This is why a repeated apology for the same behavior eventually starts to feel insulting. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It is recognizing a pattern. It is flagging the signal as corrupted, and it is beginning to revise its trust assessment of the person sending it. You do not do this consciously. You do not sit down and think through the logic. The feeling just arrives. Something is off. Something is hollow. That feeling is ancient. It is the same evaluation system your ancestors used around campfires to decide who was a genuine member of the community and who was gaming the system. Trust your instincts here. They were built for exactly this. Now, here is the part that most people never consider. The apology does not just affect the person receiving it. It does something profound to the person giving it, something biological, something that speaks to how deeply embedded this behavior is in human psychology. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman, who studies the social brain, has found that the same neural circuits involved in physical pain are involved in social rejection. Your brain does not cleanly distinguish between a broken arm and being cast out of your group. Both register as damage. Both trigger pain responses. Both demand resolution. And the act of apologizing, of taking responsibility and repairing a relationship, actually reduces the activation of those pain circuits. The apology heals the person giving it, not just the person receiving it. This is counterintuitive. We think of apology as a sacrifice. You are lowering yourself. You are admitting fault. You are making yourself vulnerable. All of that is true. But the cost is paid back almost immediately in neurological terms. The act of reconciliation does not just restore the social bond. It calms the system that was suffering from having broken it. Your ancient ancestors did not know anything about neuroscience. But they knew this felt better. They knew that living with unrepaired damage to a relationship was a low-grade source of constant stress. The weight of it, the way it colored every subsequent interaction with that person. And they knew that the act of acknowledgement, even when it was difficult, even when it required swallowing something hard, lifted that weight. They apologized partly because it made them feel better. And this is where the story takes its most counterintuitive turn, because we tend to think of the apology as something you give to another person. A gift, an act of service. And it is, but it is also profoundly selfish. Not in a bad way, in an evolutionarily elegant way. The behavior survived because it served everyone simultaneously. The offender gets relief from the stress of a broken bond. The victim gets acknowledgement and the chance to rebuild trust. The group gets a stabilized social structure. The apology is one of the rare human behaviors that has no real losers when it is done genuinely. When it is done genuinely. Now bring it all the way forward, because here is the part that should make you look at your own life differently. You live in a world that is, in many ways, a simulation of the ancient social environment. Your brain does not know you have thousands of acquaintances instead of 40. It does not know that being excluded from a friend group is not literally fatal. It does not know that the conflict you had with your colleague over an email is not the same as failing to show up for a hunt. Your brain is running ancient software on a modern problem. And that ancient software still responds to exactly the same inputs it always did. When you wrong someone and do not apologize, something in your nervous system registers that the bond is damaged. It starts generating low-level stress signals, the kind you might not even consciously notice. A vague heaviness, an awkwardness the next time you see that person, a reluctance to make eye contact. These are the same signals your ancestor felt sitting across the fire from someone they had wronged. The same signal told them the relationship needed repair. When you do apologize, and when you mean it, the system resets. The heaviness lifts. The next interaction becomes possible again, not because you said magic words, but because you performed an ancient act of social repair that your brain is literally wired to register as meaningful. The words have changed. The setting has changed. But the function is identical to what happened around fires 100,000 years ago. And there is one more thing. One last piece that completes the picture. The most sophisticated thing about the human apology, the thing that separates it from anything seen in other primates, is that it can be given for things you did not do, for things your ancestors did, for harms caused by a group you belong to against a group you do not. This is something no other animal does, and it required a level of abstract moral reasoning that is uniquely, bewilderingly human. To apologize for something you personally did not do, you have to understand group identity. You have to understand that you carry the history of the group you belong to. You have to be able to feel something like shame or responsibility for actions you did not personally commit, and to understand that repairing the relationship between the groups matters enough to perform the costly signal anyway. That is not a small cognitive step. That is one of the most remarkable feats of moral imagination in the entire story of human development. And the fact that it emerged at all, the fact that humans eventually developed the capacity to apologize not just for themselves, but on behalf of their group, their nation, their ancestors, tells you something profound about where the apology was always headed. It was always moving towards something larger than itself, always reaching beyond the individual moment, always trying to heal something bigger than one broken relationship. The apology began as a grunt, a gesture, a bowed head at the edge of a fire. It began because your ancestors needed each other to survive, and they needed a way to tell each other, "I know what I did. I am still here. I still need you." Tens of thousands of years later, you said sorry today. Maybe you said it without thinking. But now you know exactly what you were doing. You were reaching across the same ancient distance your ancestors crossed 100,000 times before you, saying the same thing they said in the only language the human brain has ever truly understood. I see you. I am still one of you. Please stay.